Tom Hanks was standing in the middle of a Starbucks in Beverly Hills, frantically warning strangers about dangerous men with guns, while police officers tried to calm him down, convinced that America's most beloved actor was having a complete mental breakdown. The 67-year-old Oscar winner appeared confused, paranoid, and disconnected from reality as he insisted that assassins were hunting an innocent woman who was sitting just 3 tables away. But what the responding officers didn't know was that Tom Hanks had been secretly working with the FBI for 6 months, and the woman he was desperately trying to protect was the key witness in the biggest organized crime case in federal court history. The morning had started normally for Tom Hanks, who was meeting his longtime friend and agent David Morrison for their weekly coffee at the upscale Starbucks on Rodeo Drive. At 67, Tom had earned the right to enjoy simple pleasures like casual conversations over coffee without the intense scrutiny that had defined his earlier career. He arrived 15 minutes early, as was his habit, and selected a corner table where he could observe the bustling Beverly Hills morning crowd while waiting for David to arrive. But as Tom settled into his seat with his usual order, a Grande Pike Place Coffee Black, he noticed something that immediately set off alarm bells in his mind. 3 men in dark suits had entered the coffee shop separately, but they were clearly coordinating their movements with subtle hand signals and positioning themselves strategically around the seating area. Their behavior reminded him of the federal agents he had worked with during his research for various film roles, except these men felt different, more predatory, more dangerous. Tom's attention was drawn to a woman sitting alone near the window, a brunette in her mid-30s who appeared nervous and kept checking her phone while glancing around the cafe. She looked familiar, though Tom couldn't immediately place where he might have seen her before. What concerned him more was that the 3 suspicious men seemed to be focusing their attention on her, positioning themselves to have clear sight lines while maintaining the appearance of casual customers. The woman was Sarah Chen, though Tom didn't know her name yet. What he also didn't know was that Sarah was the former accountant for Vincent "Vinny" Marcuso, one of the most powerful organized crime bosses on the West Coast, and that her testimony in federal court was scheduled to begin in just 4 days. Sarah had been living under federal protection for 8 months after agreeing to testify about massive money laundering operations, but someone had leaked her location to Marcuso's organization, putting her life in immediate danger. Tom's training for roles in films like Road to Perdition and his extensive research into organized crime for various projects had taught him to recognize the signs of a potential hit. The 3 men weren't just waiting for coffee. They were conducting surveillance, waiting for the right moment to act. Their positioning blocked the exits, their clothing concealed potential weapons, and their coordinated movements suggested military or law enforcement training that had been turned to criminal purposes. When one of the men reached inside his jacket and began moving toward Sarah's table, Tom knew he had to act immediately. Standing up abruptly, he walked directly to Sarah's table and sat down without invitation. "Ma'am, I'm Tom Hanks, and I believe you're in immediate danger," he said quietly, his voice carrying the calm authority that had made him one of Hollywood's most trusted figures. "Don't look around, but there are 3 armed men in this cafe who appear to be preparing to hurt you." Sarah's reaction was immediate terror, not because of the men Tom had described, but because a famous actor was talking to her about danger while she was supposed to be in hiding. Her federal protection had been based on maintaining complete anonymity, and having Tom Hanks approach her was exactly the kind of attention that could blow her cover. "Sir, I think you're mistaken," she whispered urgently. "I'm just a regular person having coffee. You must have me confused with someone else." But Tom could see the fear in her eyes and the way she kept glancing toward the men he had identified. "Ma'am, I don't know who you are or why these men want to hurt you, but I'm not going to sit here and watch someone get killed," he said firmly. "We need to call the police right now, or we need to get you out of here safely. Those men are not casual customers, and they're not here for coffee." As if responding to Tom's words, the three men began moving more aggressively. One approached the counter to order coffee, positioning himself between Sarah and the front exit. Another moved to a table near the bathroom, blocking the rear exit. The third man remained seated but was clearly watching Tom and Sarah while speaking quietly into a small communication device. The coordination was professional and deadly, exactly what Tom had feared. "Sarah," Tom said, using her name, though she hadn't told him what it was. "We're leaving right now." He had recognized her from news coverage of the upcoming Marcuso trial, and everything suddenly made sense. The federal protection, the assassins, the coordinated surveillance. Without waiting for her response, Tom stood up and announced loudly to the entire cafe, "Ladies and gentlemen, there are armed men in this building who intend to commit violence. Everyone needs to evacuate immediately." The reaction was immediate chaos. Customers began screaming, chairs toppled as people rushed toward exits, and baristas ducked behind the counter. But to the other patrons, Tom's warning appeared to be the ravings of a celebrity who had lost touch with reality. Several customers pulled out their phones to record what they assumed was Tom Hanks having a public mental breakdown, while others called 911 to report that the famous actor was causing a disturbance and appeared to be having psychological problems. Mrs. Beverly Richardson, a 54-year-old real estate agent who had been enjoying her morning latte, was one of the first to call police. "I'm at the Starbucks on Rodeo Drive, and Tom Hanks is here screaming about gunmen and making everyone panic," she told the 911 dispatcher. "He seems really confused and scared. I think he might be having some kind of breakdown or maybe early dementia. There are no gunmen here, just a bunch of regular people trying to drink coffee." As customers fled the cafe, the three suspicious men tried to blend in with the evacuation, but Tom kept pointing them out to anyone who would listen. "Those three men in the dark suits, they're the ones with weapons. Don't let them leave with that woman." But his warnings only reinforced the impression that he was delusional. To the witnesses, the men he was pointing at looked like ordinary businessmen who were as confused and frightened by Tom's outburst as everyone else. Officer Jennifer Walsh and her partner, Officer Marcus Johnson, were the first to respond to the multiple 911 calls about Tom Hanks causing a disturbance. They arrived expecting to deal with a celebrity having a psychological episode, possibly related to stress, aging, or substance abuse. What they found was Tom Hanks standing protectively in front of a terrified woman while insisting that assassins were trying to kill her in broad daylight in Beverly Hills. "Mr. Hanks, I'm Officer Walsh with the Beverly Hills Police Department," she said gently, using the calm tone typically reserved for mental health emergencies. "Sir, several people have called to report that you're upset and talking about gunmen. Can you tell me what's happening here?" Her approach was professional, but clearly indicated that she believed she was dealing with someone experiencing psychological distress, rather than reporting actual criminal activity. Tom turned to face the officers, relief flooding his face at seeing law enforcement arrive. "Officers, thank God you're here. There are 3 armed men who have been conducting surveillance on this woman. They're professional assassins, and they were preparing to kill her before I intervened. You need to detain them immediately before they escape or try to complete their mission." His words were clear and rational, but the context made them sound like paranoid delusions. Officer Johnson looked around the now mostly empty cafe and saw no evidence of the threat Tom was describing. The few remaining customers appeared to be ordinary people who seemed confused and frightened by Tom's behavior. "Mr. Hanks, can you point out these men you're concerned about?" Johnson asked patiently. "I'm looking around, and I don't see anyone who appears to be armed or threatening." "They left when the chaos started," Tom explained urgently. "But they'll be back or they'll follow her when she leaves. Officer, this woman is clearly under some kind of federal protection, and those men were professional killers. You need to contact the FBI immediately and verify her identity and protection status." But his insistence on federal conspiracies and professional assassins only reinforced the officer's belief that he was experiencing psychological problems. Sarah Chen, meanwhile, was facing an impossible situation. Her federal handlers had been very clear that maintaining her cover was essential for both her safety and the success of the prosecution. If she revealed her identity to local police, word might leak back to Marcuso's organization. But if she didn't confirm Tom's story, he would appear to be having a mental breakdown, and the real assassins would have another opportunity to complete their mission. "Officers," Sarah said carefully, "I think Mr. Hanks is genuinely trying to help, but I'm not in any danger. I'm just a regular person who was having coffee when he approached me and started talking about gunmen. I think he might be confused or maybe mixing up reality with a movie role he's preparing for." Her words were designed to protect her cover, but they had the unintended effect of making Tom appear delusional to the responding officers. Officer Walsh was now convinced that they were dealing with a celebrity mental health crisis. Tom Hanks, one of America's most beloved actors, appeared to be experiencing paranoid delusions involving federal witnesses and professional assassins. The situation required careful handling to protect both Tom's dignity and public safety. "Mr. Hanks, I think you might be feeling overwhelmed or confused right now. Why don't we call someone you trust to come and help you get home safely?" But Tom wasn't giving up. "Officer Walsh, I understand how this looks, but I'm not having a breakdown. I'm trying to prevent a murder. Please just call the FBI and ask them about witness protection for Sarah Chen. Ask them about the Marcuso trial. Ask them about threats against federal witnesses. You'll find out that everything I'm telling you is true." His persistence in naming specific details began to plant seeds of doubt in the officers' minds. The mention of specific names and federal cases gave Officer Johnson pause. In his 15 years of law enforcement, he had learned that people experiencing psychological breaks typically made vague, generalized claims rather than citing specific federal cases and individual names. "Mr. Hanks, how do you know this woman's name is Sarah Chen? How do you know about the Marcuso trial?" His question suggested he was beginning to take Tom's claims more seriously. Tom's answer would begin to turn the tide of the entire investigation. "Officer, I've been working as an unpaid consultant with the FBI for 6 months, helping them understand how organized crime figures might try to intimidate or silence witnesses. Agent Rebecca Martinez of the LA field office can verify my involvement. Sarah Chen is scheduled to testify in federal court starting Monday, and someone leaked her protection location to Vincent Marcuso's organization." The specificity of Tom's information was beginning to concern both officers. Either he was experiencing incredibly detailed and coherent delusions, or he was telling the truth about a genuine threat that they had dismissed as celebrity mental illness. Officer Walsh decided to err on the side of caution. "Johnson, I'm going to radio dispatch and ask them to contact the FBI field office. If Mr. Hanks is right about any of this, we need federal backup immediately." While Officer Walsh was making her radio calls, Tom continued scanning the area around the cafe for signs of the three men he had identified earlier. "Officers, those men haven't given up. They're probably repositioning for another attempt, either here or when Sarah tries to leave. Professional assassins don't abandon a mission just because their first attempt was disrupted. We need to get her to a secure federal facility immediately." Within minutes, Officer Walsh received confirmation that would completely vindicate Tom's seemingly impossible claims. "Johnson, I just spoke with FBI agent Rebecca Martinez. She confirms that Tom Hanks has been working as a consultant on witness protection security and that Sarah Chen is indeed a protected federal witness in the Marcuso case. Agent Martinez is en route with a federal protection team, and she says there have been credible threats against Ms. Chen's life." The transformation in the officers' attitudes was immediate and dramatic. Tom Hanks wasn't having a mental breakdown. He was a federal consultant who had just prevented an assassination attempt on a key witness in a major organized crime trial. Sarah Chen wasn't an innocent bystander. She was a protected witness whose location had been compromised, putting her life in immediate danger. "Mr. Hanks, I owe you a significant apology," Officer Walsh said, her tone shifting from patient concern to professional respect. "We should have taken your report more seriously from the beginning. Can you provide descriptions of the three men you identified as potential assassins? We need to put out a BOLO alert immediately." Tom's detailed descriptions of the suspects, including their positioning, behavior patterns, and apparent coordination, impressed both officers with their accuracy and tactical awareness. Agent Rebecca Martinez arrived at the scene with a full federal protection team just as Tom was finishing his descriptions of the suspected assassins. A veteran of 20 years in federal law enforcement, Agent Martinez had worked with many civilian consultants, but none had demonstrated the observational skills and tactical awareness that Tom had developed through his methodical approach to researching his film roles. "Tom, thank you for protecting Sarah," Agent Martinez said as federal agents immediately surrounded Sarah Chen and began preparations to move her to a more secure location. "Our intelligence suggested that Marcuso's people had located her, but we didn't expect them to move this quickly. Your intervention probably saved her life and preserved the integrity of our entire case against the Marcuso organization." Agent Martinez explained to the local officers how Tom had become involved in federal witness protection consulting. "Mr. Hanks approached us 6 months ago after he learned about threats against witnesses in organized crime cases. He offered to help us understand how criminals might try to identify and target protected witnesses, drawing on his research experience and his understanding of human behavior. His insights have been invaluable." The revelation that Tom Hanks had been secretly working with the FBI for months explained his seemingly paranoid behavior and his detailed knowledge of federal protection protocols. What had appeared to be celebrity delusions were actually the actions of a trained federal consultant who had recognized a genuine threat and acted to protect an innocent life, even when it meant risking his own reputation and credibility. Sarah Chen, now safely surrounded by federal agents, approached Tom to thank him personally. "Mr. Hanks, I'm sorry I couldn't confirm your story earlier. My handlers told me that maintaining my cover was essential. But I realize now that you probably saved my life. Those men were definitely watching me, and I was starting to feel scared even before you approached my table. Her gratitude was genuine and emotional. Agent Martinez provided additional details about the threat that Tom had identified and disrupted. Our investigation has confirmed that Vincent Marcuso's organization had indeed located Sarah's protection address and was planning to eliminate her before the trial. The 3 men Mr. Hanks identified were professional contractors hired specifically for this assassination. His intervention forced them to abandon their immediate plans and gave us time to relocate Sarah to a more secure facility. The investigation that followed Tom's report led to the arrest of all 3 suspected assassins within 48 hours. Federal agents tracked them down using Tom's detailed descriptions and security footage from the Starbucks and surrounding businesses. The men were found in possession of weapons, surveillance equipment, and detailed plans for targeting Sarah Chen, confirming every aspect of Tom's seemingly impossible story. Officer Walsh and Officer Johnson both received commendations for their professional handling of the situation, particularly their willingness to verify Tom's claims rather than simply dismissing them as celebrity mental illness. Their decision to contact the FBI probably prevented a successful assassination and preserved a critical federal prosecution. The case became a training example for law enforcement agencies about the importance of thoroughly investigating all reports, regardless of how unlikely they might initially appear. The attempted assassination of Sarah Chen was front-page news across the country, but Tom Hanks refused most interview requests, preferring to let the focus remain on the importance of witness protection and the courage required to testify against organized crime. In his brief statement to the press, he said, "I'm grateful that I was in the right place at the right time to help protect someone who was doing the right thing by testifying against criminals." Vincent Marcuso was ultimately convicted on all charges in federal court, largely based on Sarah Chen's testimony about the money laundering operations she had helped facilitate during her time as his organization's accountant. The successful prosecution resulted in the dismantling of one of the largest organized crime networks on the West Coast and the seizure of millions of dollars in criminal assets. Tom's work as an FBI consultant expanded following the Starbucks incident, and he began speaking at law enforcement conferences about threat recognition and civilian cooperation in protecting witnesses. His message was always the same. Ordinary citizens have a responsibility to protect innocent people, even when it means taking risks or appearing foolish to others. The 3 assassins hired to kill Sarah Chen were sentenced to lengthy federal prison terms for conspiracy to commit murder and violations of federal witness protection laws. During their sentencing hearings, federal prosecutors noted that the quick thinking and courage of a civilian consultant had prevented what would have been a devastating blow to the federal justice system's ability to prosecute organized crime. 6 months after the incident, Tom Hanks and Sarah Chen met again, this time at a secure federal facility where she was being debriefed following the successful conclusion of the Marcuso trial. "Mr. Hanks, I wanted to thank you again for what you did," she said. "Because of your willingness to get involved, I'm alive. Vincent Marcuso is in prison, and his entire criminal organization has been destroyed." For Tom, the experience reinforced his belief that celebrity status comes with responsibilities that extend far beyond entertainment. When you have a platform and people listen to you, you have an obligation to use that influence to protect others, he reflected in a later interview. I'd rather be wrong about a threat and look foolish than be right about a threat and do nothing. The Starbucks incident became part of federal law enforcement training, demonstrating how effective witness protection requires collaboration between federal agencies, local police, and alert citizens. Tom's willingness to risk his reputation to protect a stranger became a model for civilian cooperation in law enforcement, showing that heroism often means acting when others won't believe you. Today, Tom Hanks continues his work as an unpaid FBI consultant while maintaining his successful acting career. The incident at Starbucks taught him that sometimes the most important roles we play aren't on screen, but in real life, when we choose to protect others even when it means personal risk. Agent Martinez often tells new recruits that the most valuable law enforcement asset is an alert citizen who cares enough to get involved. The story of Tom Hanks and the federal witness serves as a powerful reminder that in our complex modern world, protecting justice requires cooperation between professional law enforcement and engaged citizens. Sometimes the difference between a successful prosecution and a murdered witness comes down to one person's willingness to trust their instincts and act, even when everyone else thinks they're wrong. In Tom's case, being willing to look delusional was the price of being a hero.